Welcome to The Explainer. So, here's a thought. Could you just copy and paste a law from one country and drop it into another? I mean, it sounds like a pretty neat shortcut to modernization, right? But as we're about to find out, what seems simple on the surface is actually incredibly complex and, honestly, full of some really fascinating surprises. All right, let's dive right in with a bit of a puzzle. Picture this. It's the 1950s. You've got a country sitting on an absolute mountain of wealth. But there's a huge problem. Its foundational laws, its very constitution, are getting in the way of building the modern economy it needs to manage all that money. So what on earth do you do? That exact situation happened in Saudi Arabia in the 1950s. Oil money was starting to gush in, and they were on the verge of becoming a major player on the world stage. They had the oil, they had the cash, but they desperately needed a modern financial system to handle it. And here's the catch. The entire engine of Western banking runs on charging interest, or riba. But in Islam, which is the constitutional law of the land in Saudi Arabia, that's strictly forbidden. So they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. So how do you solve this? Well, the idea they landed on was surprisingly simple, almost radical. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, why not just borrow one? Just take a financial system that already works somewhere else and bring it over. And this idea has a name, which is going to be our key concept for today. It's called a legal transplant. It's exactly what it sounds like. You take a law, or even a whole legal system, from one place, say the US or France, and you plant it in another country, like Saudi Arabia. And this isn't a new idea, by the way. It's been a go-to tool for modernization for hundreds of years. But, could it really be that easy? Just plug and play? Well, this seemingly simple idea kicked off this massive intellectual debate. And it really gets to the heart of a huge question. What even is a law? Is it just a bunch of technical rules like an instruction manual? Or is it something more, something that's totally tangled up in a country's culture, its history, its very identity? And this huge debate really comes down to two key thinkers who had, completely opposite takes on the whole thing. Okay, so in one corner, you've got Alan Watson, a Scottish legal historian. His take? Not only is transplanting law possible, he thought it was pretty darn easy. And then, in the other corner, you have Pierre Legrand, a French scholar. His argument? A true legal transplant is, it's flat out impossible. For Watson, law was basically just a technical tool. He believed a good, solid rule is kind of like a piece of software. You can just install it on any computer, any society, and it should run just fine. The local culture, the social context, to him, that was all just background noise. Legrand, on the other hand, said, no way. For him, a law isn't a tool, it's a cultural artifact. It's stitched together from a country's entire history, its language, its deepest values. Sure, you can copy the words of a law and move them, but you can't move the meaning. So for Legrand, a transplanted law is just an empty shell. It might look right on the outside, but the spirit, the actual life of the law, is gone. So, who's right? Is it easy or is it impossible? To figure that out, let's head back to Saudi Arabia and see what actually happened on the ground. Okay, so here's what they did, and it's pretty clever. They did, in fact, transplant the Western model for a central bank. But they had to adapt it. The king hated the word bank because everyone associated it with interest. So they just didn't call it a bank. They called it the Saudi Arabian Monetary Agency. Problem solved. Years later, when credit cards came along, they were introduced into Arabic not as credit cards, but as a card-to-pay leader. See? These little but crucial linguistic tweaks made these totally foreign ideas fit right into their culture. So what's the takeaway here? It's that reality is, it's messy. In a way, they were both right. Watson was right. You could move the basic legal structure. But Legrand was also right because as soon as it landed, the local culture completely changed its meaning and how it was presented. It was absolutely not a simple copy and paste job. And this isn't just a one-off thing with Saudi Arabia. It turns out local context is everything. Just look at Malaysia. They successfully blended British common law with Islamic and local customs. In Turkey, they created what's called a living law by always tweaking transplanted Western codes to fit their traditions. But then you look at Pakistan, where similar attempts just didn't take, thanks to things like corruption and strong cultural resistance. So the exact same transplant can be a huge success in one place and a total failure in another. So all of this real-world complexity, the successes, the failures, the weird transformations, it forced legal experts to move beyond that simple easy versus impossible argument. They needed a better, more nuanced way to explain what was really going on. And that's where the German scholar Gunther Twibner comes in with a really cool idea. He said maybe we shouldn't call them transplants at all. We should call them legal irritants. Think about it. A new law doesn't just slot in perfectly. It irritates the system it's dropped into, kind of like a grain of sand in an oyster. And that constant irritation forces both the new law and the local culture to change, to adapt, until eventually they create something totally new, a pearl. Okay, here's another really great way to think about it, and this one comes from the scholar Essen Oruju. It's a cooking analogy. Let's say you get a recipe for a classic French dish, but when you go to the store, you can't find one of the key ingredients, so you swap it out for something local you have on hand. Maybe you add a favorite local spice. What do you end up with? Well, it's not the original French dish anymore, is it? It's a new fusion dish. And that's exactly her idea of transposition. The law you end up with is neither completely foreign nor completely local. It's a unique blend of both. So where does this leave us in our super connected, globalized world? We tend to think that globalization just makes everything the same. But this shows us that when it comes to law, the exact opposite might be happening. Every time a law gets transplanted, it doesn't create uniformity. It creates a new, unique hybrid, a totally new legal flavor in the world. So the next time you read about a country borrowing a law from somewhere else, think about this. Are they just making a copy, or are they actually cooking up something the world has never seen before?